All right, welcome everybody to the comic panel. I'm Cody,
I'm Talon.
And I'm Shawenta.
and today we are covering the webcomic Unsounded, written and drawn by Ashley Cope. All right, so to kind of get into this book, you want to kind of intro it for us, Shawenta, since you chose it?
We read the first 3 chapters. I read a little farther. So, there's 17 chapters overall. And the comic is would you call it high fantasy? It's kind of like...
Certainly fantasy.
Yeah, it's
fantasy.
Yeah, I mean, even just to steal a little bit from the Wikipedia page here, it's the comic itself, or Ashley Cope, describes it as falling into epic fantasy adventure genre with occasional forays into the horrific, the profane, and the goofy.
Ah.
Did not know that going into it.
Yeah.
That's the thing. So I read this comic when I was younger, probably when it was just first coming out, since it came out in, 2010?
Yeah.
July 14th or so, we said?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, July 14th,
Yes.
2010 was the first update.
Yeah. And so, I probably read the first 2 chapters or so. I had family that was reading it.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't super young, but I was definitely young reading it. And I feel like some of the more mature and, inappropriate stuff, just flew over my head.
Yeah,
interesting.
I can see that. There's certain things that it's a little bit more. I guess not to be overly profane here, but there's multiple mentions of just balls, but other than that, it's just kind of a lot of the stuff can really fly over your head because of the language that they use. I feel like. It's just kind of oh, I see what you did there, but I could have not.
Yeah, okay, sweet, yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of world building in the comic, and the main character being, how do you pronounce her name? Sette?
Yeah, I wasn't sure.
Yeah. I was thinking Sette.
Sette?
I was thinking Sette, yeah.
Okay.
It kind of makes me think of,
yeah.
Never mind.
Yeah,
but
I
then
guess
there's Duane.
Yeah. It's either Sette or it's Set spelled like bet.
Right, yeah.
I like Sette.
Okay. Yeah, Sette from a gem. From a
gem.
Yeah. From a gem.
I don't know what you guys are saying.
Her last name. The family she comes from.
Frumudgeon or something.
Yeah, Frumudgeon. Yep.
Sounded like you guys were saying from a gem, but not able to pronounce it.
I mean,
actually, that's the name looks like that.
Close, yeah. Right?
Yeah, that is how it's spelled. Obviously it's not F-R-O-M, but it's F-R-U-M-M-A-G-E-M. Frumudgeon.
So, Sette Frumudgeon, she's from a thief family. Her dad's considered the king of thieves. And she's on a mission to find her cousin, who has started a separate kind of branch of a thief's guild equivalent in his area. And he's kind of dropped off the map. They think he's making money, but, Sette, being the daughter of the king of thieves, in her opinion, is out to find out what happened. And she's accompanied by a bodyguard of sorts called Duane, and he is undead. They joke a lot that he's a zombie, and we do come to find out that he does have a craving for flesh, despite having no real organs anymore.
Yeah.
And so, the beginning is them going on this journey. They've been on the journey for a little bit, so we join them as they're arguing because they seem to have gone off course.
Right.
And what we find out, they come across the root monster, which is supposed to be some ancient creature that probably was there at the beginning of the earth. There's like we mentioned, there's a lot of world building in this comic, so they have different religions, different people, obviously different political atmosphere
Yeah.
and borders. And so Duane is really worried about going too far west because there's almost like a war starting over there because there's a lot of tension. And it comes out that Sette is trying to lead them that way on purpose, but she has to obscure it from Duane because, of course, he would object.
Mhm.
I think it's implied at one point that he died over there.
Mm-hmm.
That's where he's from. So obviously, a lot of bad memories.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't
And one of the
exactly
things-
get that, but yeah.
One of the
Yeah.
things they come across is slavers. So people who are catching civilians in the area, and they think using them as slaves because slavery is legal in certain countries and across certain borders.
Mm-hmm.
Other places use like the undead zombies, have them
Yeah.
just like masked.
Which
Mhm.
is different than Duane, like like we
Well,
said.
Duane claims he's different. He looks very similar though, doesn't he?
Mhm.
Yeah, I guess that'd be more getting further into the story to know for sure. But I guess I kind of still assumed that he was different in some capacity. But
I mean, so he can cast spells,
mhm.
and he's especially, not everybody can cast spells, and also he can do it without saying them out loud. So I think they call it a tactic caster or something.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
hard to know what he's going to do next.
Mhm.
Very dangerous.
Yeah, I suppose though, just getting a little bit into theorizing slightly, maybe that's really why they keep the mouths covered on the zombie slaves. They're all like, oh, it's so that they don't like bite people, which I mean, also probably partially true. Like if they do have a taste for flesh, then,
Yeah.
but like also, they can't speak spells.
True.
Yeah. I mean, I think also, I'm theorizing more, of course. Like, Duane, he claims, he's been at this for longer than most, since 6 years since he died, and he is basically repairing himself a bunch, and, like, keeping himself going through spells and glamour so people don't recognize he's a zombie.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. What is the term that he prefers? It's a gallet, I think?
Mhm.
Yeah, Gallet.
Okay. I assume
Which-
that that's probably just a type of monster
Sub-
creature that I just have never heard of.
I figured it was just like a sub-class of zombies.
Yeah.
Well, not a zombie.
You know, of course, not a zombie. He's like, I'm not a zombie, I'm a Gallet.
Mhm.
So yeah, a lot of the early chapters are them fighting Duane and Sette, once Duane realizes she destroyed their map on purpose, and she's also not very easy to get along with because she's very confident and cannot stop stealing, and just likes to push people's buttons in general.
I feel like that's a very... I took a more negative approach to that.
I said she likes to push people's buttons on purpose.
Yeah, that just seems too nice.
She's a brat, as the back of the book says.
Yeah.
So yeah, they come across those slavers, and I mean, Duane takes it very seriously. He doesn't like the children being hurt. He doesn't like innocent people being hurt. He has a sense of justice. Whereas Sette is like, okay, we saved them. Can we leave now?
Yeah.
And they come across like the actual, what is it? A tomb? A religious area? Ruins, I guess.
Or no, it's
tomb
a
slash-
crypt. It was a crypt.
Crypt, that's it. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
A crypt. That's being used by these so-called slavers to store bodies. And it seems that they're harvesting organs.
Yeah.
Well, they're taking
Yeah.
organs out, and they're doing something else.
Mm-hmm.
A little unclear so far, but obviously it's much worse than the typical slavers.
Right. Yeah.
And particularly they're targeting children because of their less organs or something of that sort.
Yeah, it also seemed like maybe too, it was like less organs, but you can fit more of them, like, more on a cart, basically. Like, it was just easier to transport them.
Something along those lines.
Are you talking about in those urns?
No, not in the urns. Like, just
the actual
like
bodies of the kids. Afterwards.
Yeah, while they're alive, like on their little cart in the back, pulling.
So we get 2 points of view. We have Duane and Sette who are going after the people who were in the crypt. Well, Duane, takes it really personally. Like, he witnessed a little girl die in his arms from the, surgery. So he's after the Red Berry Boys, what they call themselves, the slavers. And we also get to see the other side, the slavers trying to, run away pretty much. They're trying to transport what they have so far. And they, I think they get the help of Maddie.
Or Quigley.
Quigley? Is that his last name?
No, Quigley is his father, I believe.
Okay.
The guy that they were trying to get to work with them, but he wouldn't.
The little kid is Maddie, probably.
Yes.
You're
yeah.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. Quigley. And he's, spellcaster too, so he's offering them glamours and different ways of hiding their cart to get across borders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but the Quigley is pretty much yeah, I'll help you, but you have to, at first he's don't take the kids, and then he's or, part of my price is you have to give me the kids.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because he...
sense of helping, sort of.
Well, I think what they're portraying him as is a sense of morality. Oh, I realize what I've been a part of is not right. And so when he was originally going to help them just as part of the plan, but he had a change of heart. And so they're kind of begging him for his help. And his response is either don't ask for my help, or if I'm going to help you, you gotta give me all the kids that you have. Yeah.
And at first, the Red Berry Boys are pretty much kind of, giving him offers, but also threatening him a little bit. And then once it comes to his kid, then he just basically attacks with magic and is but as a warning, is no, you're gonna listen to whatever terms I have. It's my price. I'm more powerful than you, and you need me.
I want to emphasize again that the Red Berry Boys are slavers, but not really, because in this world, slavers are people who actually take slaves, whereas, if my understanding is correct, the Red Berry Boys actually kill the kids.
Yeah, they kill. And, I mean, it seems still for some sort of nefarious purpose other than just plain murder,
Right. Yeah. And so the kids that they were trying to get across were the kids that they were going to eventually kill. And so, at least how I perceive Quigley is he's I'm going, I want to take the kids to save them from that.
Yeah, no, that's exactly.
I realize that they're kind of, unsavable, probably.
Yeah, no, and there also, there are adults on the shipment, Yeah.
Yeah, whoever they could grab.
Kids just happen to be so darn easy to grab. But
yeah, that's basically first 3 chapters. A little bit of fighting.
Yeah, we do get some perspective from some of the kids, particularly one kid who is
GV.
GV, who is one of the captured children. Also, towards the end of chapter 3, we start getting the perspective of some soldiers from Cresce, which is
they're sort of like police.
Yeah. peacekeeping.
Okay, so yeah, that's one thing I forgot to mention was the fact that Duane and Sette were in the crypt, when they were discovering all this horrible stuff going on after the Redberry boys had already ran away. But then, what is it? The guards come in because they've been tracking the slavers and heard the explosion of the trap going off, I believe.
Yeah. And also on top of that.
And so they think Duane and Sette are part of the Redberry boys, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they also go in because the people that they saved initially from the Redberry boys, Sette actually steals their money, and so they...
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah. Okay. So they realize this and kind of send the guards after them.
Well, because they said that they robbed them rather than stole from them, which I thought was just a lie.
No, yeah. So
well, she took money. I thought she took money from the Redberry boys.
No, it was from
take it from them.
Yeah, from the victims.
Gotcha. That makes a lot more sense. I have a lot more sympathy for them now.
Yeah.
So was it also? I thought I read that the Peace Corps or
peacekeeping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those guys from Cresce were following particularly Sette and Duane because they say they followed them from the place that they were at, which is Shire, something like that.
No, because they're there basically because a war is brewing, right? And so they are there on a tour of duty basically to keep the peace, and so because the country that they're in doesn't actually have a military, but because they had this run-in and one of the soldiers' brothers lost an arm to Duane, now there's kind of this vendetta, but they haven't been specifically tracking them until this point where they're oh, I gotta get them,
They're part of the Redberry boys. They've hurt us, horribly.
Yeah.
Wanted to, so the place that Sette is from is Chartashane, which we mentioned she's from, her father is the king of thieves, and so that's their town where they're from. And
well, it's an area. It's a coastal area.
Okay.
And then so there's the one map we get to see it. So there's Mishane, Olistri, Manilda, and Cresce is the most farthest west when you start to hit water again. And I think that's the part where Duane's really worried about hitting.
Yeah.
All the tension.
Yeah, to get a little bit better of an idea of the geography, the whole continent is called Kasslyn. And it's basically split up into two major political presences, even though there's multiple countries, they're basically controlled by Cresce and Alderode.
Oh, okay.
And they kind of, exist in perpetual war and proxy war.
And what I took from them mentioning Alderode and Cresce is that Cresce is more police, police state or something like that.
That's what they literally call it later.
Yeah.
A what?
A police state.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But then Alderode is more run by people who can wield magic, magic users.
Yes, I think that's kind of the.
Okay.
Yeah, a little bit of technology and more hardcore, I don't know, society, steampunkiness, and
was it spellings? Is that?
Yeah. I mean, they do use magic, but more in a technological kind of way, and then Alderode is more magic,
Oh, I see what you mean.
Mm-hmm.
So Cresce is the steampunky magic.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Right. Yeah. Also, I wanted to quickly, before we got too much further into the book itself, talk a little bit about, like, its, I guess, history. So it's been updating 3 times a week. Is that correct, Shuenta?
Yeah, usually they do around 3 pages a week.
Okay, yeah, 3 pages a week.
A few years. So yeah, now to 17 chapters.
Right, yeah. And I think that this is pretty much the only work that Ashley Cope has, like, really been, focusing her time and money on. Or, well, time, I guess, not really. But,
I mean, you gotta buy supplies.
Right, yeah, that's true. So yeah, pretty much, and the book has always been available for free, without ads or anything like that. I did notice that, so we read it on the, original, her original website for it, but it also, I was reading that there was, ways that in some ways it was like had what's called infinity pages, and so is that more akin to how somebody would read on a webtoon at times, like an infinite scrolling kind of thing?
I think it's necessarily like that. Like, one of the things I was reading, because like I read the print form since I happened to own it, since somebody else bought it on the Kickstarter. You can buy 3 different, you can buy up to 3 volumes, which, each have 3 chapters in them.
Right.
But on the website, when there was, like, certain things happening in the comics, sometimes they would have, like, overlays, like signs hanging down into the page on the website, so it'd be, like, propaganda or something.
Mm-hmm.
Which, so, there's a lot of little kind of almost like environmental storytelling to go with it.
Okay, gotcha.
And I think that's more of what they're referring to than, like, endless scrolls.
Okay. That makes more sense now. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't, like, missing. And I will later on mention that there was something where I was like, that seems, like, kind of weird in that way, like something got cut, but yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I
think I know what you're talking about.
But yeah, anyway, going back to kind of Ashley Cope, she, when asked, some of her influences for the work were Alan Moore, Sophie Campbell, Jeff Smith, Hayao Miyazaki, Range Murata, Mahiro Mediya, and also, though, she's very influenced by the novel Moby Dick by Herman Melville. And that's why the title is actually a line or a reference to a line from Moby Dick, which is, "By heaven, man, we are turned round and round in this world like yonder windlass, and fate is the handspike. And all the time, lo, the smiling sky and this unsounded sea."
What does unsounded mean?
Good question. I think that it is kind of, like, at least in terms of that quote, it's meant to be, like, kind of, like, the unsounded sea would be, it's like all-encompassing, kind of.
I think unsound itself means, like, unsafe or
situated
unstable.
At or extending to a great depth. Too deep to be unsounded or plumbed. So, unexplored.
Okay.
So deep, it's not possible to explore it.
Gotcha.
Yeah, remote
okay.
and unsounded caverns.
Okay. That makes sense now. Like, that version of sounded is, like, exploring. I get it now. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Oh.
That adds something to it that I didn't know before.
Yeah. She also said that, she drew, like, some of the different, like, kind of families, including the Frimogens, the Winnells, and the Aldelier families are based on some of her own family members.
Duane is part of the Aldelier family.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, and I don't think that in these chapters we got introduced to the Winnellis family, but maybe we did. I just didn't recognize.
That would be Peter if we did.
Oh, Peter?
I'm guessing.
Oh, okay.
That would be my vote.
Okay. Yeah. But yeah, she also took some inspiration from history, doing historical research, like the Nuremberg trials, historical battles in World War I, and the lives of child soldiers in the Khmer Rouge, which, to give a slight history of that really quickly, it's the Communist Party of I could possibly butcher this name, Kampuchea. And basically it's part of Cambodia, essentially, and it was in the 1974 to 1979, so the late 1970s.
I thought you were gonna like try to say Cambodia, and you're having trouble with Cambodia.
No, it's a basically a
I know
part.
What you mean now.
Yeah. So yeah, basically though, I mean, child soldiers though.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, specifically she was like, yeah, there's no way that I could possibly know about their experiences other than, reading about them.
Right.
But yeah, that's just some things about Ashley Cope and her influences. So yeah, I think that now we can get into a little bit like what we specifically thought about the book itself. I have to say that, starting off, I first of all just didn't even realize it was like so totally like, I mean, we've read a few other webcomics, I'm thinking of like Tiger and what was that?
Stand Still, Stay Silent.
Oh yeah, Stand Still, Stay Silent. That was more recently even. But yeah, I just didn't realize, how popular this was until very recently doing some research for it. It's like it has a fandom wiki, it has a Wikipedia page, Kickstarter, Patreon, just all of this stuff. Yeah, but I was kind of put off by, I guess, some of the more like complex world building that didn't hold your hand through, and
there's never like an explanation page, really, right?
Yeah, no.
I was waiting for that. I was like, I can't wait for an explanation page.
Yeah,
because every single sentence they're like using jargon from their world. Well, not actual jargon, but
right, yeah.
I was more like, at least in the beginning, like thrown off by. It seems like we're in the middle of this like adventure. Like we don't see how Duane and Sette met, and so it's very much like they've already known each other. They are already frustrated with each other. We don't even get their names in the beginning. And so I was kind of more thrown off by that, like that. Like, did I miss some pages? Like, that's how I felt.
Right, yeah. There's a lot of just referring back to the deal that Sette's dad basically, set up.
But I will say, like, as you read on, though, they do go back and explain some of those things. So,
right, definitely. Yeah, and then some of the like, just like. Yeah, I mean, we've kind of mentioned it, but all of the like different world building and the magic and, stuff, and like, they, in the third chapter, they kind of talk a little bit and give like a character that explains some of like the religion stuff, but even that is like so just scratching the surface, it feels like sometimes we're just like, okay, yeah, this is such a foreign world.
Oh yeah, and we didn't even mention that Sette has a tail.
Oh yeah, and Sette has a tail.
It's not explained, and she definitely has to hide it.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, she looks like a totally normal person.
Yeah.
Little child.
Mm-hmm.
She got a little lion tail. She's a little girl.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and on top of that too, if the unexplained, world building wasn't enough to kind of like be jarring, the two main characters, Sette and Duane, actually talk very, very differently and still not in a, I guess, dialect that would be like, standard American English. It's like Sette is like kind of a backcountry, sometimes reminds me a little bit of like Gaelic, but just like very rough. It spells out when she calls Duane stupid. It's like STOOPID, stupid,
or stupendous.
Yeah.
Bad, like
Yeah.
So I was thinking, like, at first I was thinking more like country, but like it's more, to me, more Gaelic.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's some of that, I think, but like in general, it's going for kind of a cross-cultural country bumpkin, I think.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, and then Duane, meanwhile, is like the exact opposite of the spectrum. He talks in incredibly like fanciful words.
Like turpidacious.
And she says extremely wordy too.
Yeah.
Or turpitudinous.
Yeah, something like that. But yeah, just like, lots of words and lots of big words.
My man.
So yeah, sometimes it's like when they're both talking to each other, which is often, I'm just like, okay, I understand. Oh, I gotta switch over and understand that, and then switch to that. Yeah.
You know what's funny? I didn't even think about this, but given the fact that they speak so differently, it's surprising that one of them doesn't. Well, I guess maybe Sette would feel this way, but it's surprising that Duane isn't like, "What are you saying?" Like, I don't quite understand you. Your accent is not helping.
Right. Yeah.
But I think Sette though feels that way, where she's like, "I don't understand half the things you say."
Yeah, definitely. Like, I mean, Sette doesn't care enough to like really like, it's only when it's like he's being annoying, basically. Yeah. She's like, well, I don't even understand what you're saying anyway.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, she's totally comfortable with just misunderstanding Duane. Like when he like tries to make a metaphor that there is a snake in his belly where his stomach had been, and that's like, the metaphor for his hunger. And she's just all like, yeah, use the snake. Is it the kind that eats or that bites or the kind that strangles?
Like, it's a metaphor.
Yeah.
And then she's like, so is a metaphor snake like poisonous?
Yeah. Yeah. Which that
it's a little off-putting at the beginning, how much they fought.
Yeah.
Because that's pretty much their only interaction, right? Like, fight, argue.
And that's our introduction to them.
Yeah, which, like you were saying, it's a little hard because we're not introduced to, like... They are the average to us in this world, and they are completely not average in this world.
Yeah.
We're like, oh, are they abnormal? I didn't realize that.
Oh, yeah, I got you.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, when I was first reading it, I was like, man, they are doing nothing to make Sette like a relatable or just sympathetic. I was just like, man, I don't like her, and I have no reason, like, even like, oh, this is what they were trying to do. Like, no, I have to assume that they just don't want you to like her.
the thing.
Yeah.
I didn't really like Duane either.
Yeah, no.
Really?
I mean,
I can respect Duane.
Yeah, he's easier to
It happened eventually. Like, once he starts, like, you know, against the slavers,
Okay, that's fair.
you can see his sense of justice. But, like,
Yeah.
before that, I'm like, God.
Mm-hmm.
All he does is argue with her, and then, like, the weird joke. Yeah. Just argue, can't get along, can't even talk civilly.
Mm-hmm.
No idea what they're arguing about half the time back then.
Yeah.
I think that's also why, like, when they went into the crypt and, like, Sette is, like, really scared. I was like, okay, I start to, like, see another side to her and start to like her a little more.
Yeah, definitely. That helped, I think. I think that chapter 2 was very much like a turning point in a lot of ways, but like at the same time it was just like, ooh, we still have a long way to go. But yeah, just the because I mean, I think because they were put in like this very like perilous situation, because I mean, even at like when they first face the Berry Boys, you know, it's like, yeah, they're fighting and it's not just like a quick easy win, but at the same time it's a pretty quick and easy win. You know, like they don't lose anything. But then in the crypt it's like, oh, a lot of bad stuff happens. They're kind of put into a corner, and so you see a lot more vulnerability from both of them, and the effects of that kind of continue on until finally in the third chapter where it's like, okay, we have to reveal our secrets a little bit, and you know, like Sette has to be like, yeah, the reason that I'm tricking you is because I don't think that I can do this on my own, you know, and I think that might mean that I'll die. Yeah. And Duane is like, you know, I don't like being lied to, but you know, I do also I want to protect you, basically. And because he has, I think it's only hinted at in chapter 3, but also maybe further down that he has like, basically like Sette looks like a girl that he knew once, a small child. Yeah, I mean, only in that when she was trying to convince him to help her, we see a panel of Sette looking like somebody different, right? Yes. And so it's, you know, hinted at that's somebody different that Duane knew. Yes, but nothing else was expounded upon that.
Even her being like, okay, I won't call you a zombie more, because, you know, he told her all those things, you know, and I'll try not to vex you. You know, her trying to actually make peace. Right. She was like, finally. I'm like, okay, yeah, if you can just like be cool for like at least like 5 pages, you know, I'll like you a little bit. Thing, like reading this as a kid, Sette gets up to so much where I was always like, that's funny, because I'm a child too, and I would like to do whatever I want.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Just bother people.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I'm just like, annoying kid. That's obviously like also like, you know, I think that it's very easy to see how like, you know, insecure she is like throughout the story, where it's just like, you know, just all of this flaw is being like pushed into you know, major like I don't know how to say it exactly, but just like, you know, having a lot of like fake self-confidence, basically. Yeah, I mean,
even if you get to like chapter 4, like you start to get flashbacks to her talking to her dad, or like being told what to do by other people in the guild, or the thieves group, and she's very meek in some ways and very nervous, and it's such an interesting other angle. So I really like the flashbacks. Yeah,
that sounds good, you know, just in the like, because I think that she, especially at the beginning, sees herself as so much better than Duane, you know, and I think that it's like, it is again that like flip-flop where it's like she does truly believe that, but at the same time, like Duane kind of just naturally acts better than her too, like, you know, just like the whole, like we were saying, the way that he speaks and, you know, all of that, and that he can do magic, and that she is relying on him, you know, she kind of has to act better than him.
You know, it makes me think about like children of like a king. You know, not that I know a king personally, but for some reason, like you just get this
common thing in books. Yeah.
You just get this sense like what a child of a king acts as if they are the king, or like acting within the king's authority. And so they have that sense of grandeur, you know, that then they get into either real world situations, they have that expectation. And so when they get into the real world situations, I think a lot of them would realize like, oh, actually I don't.
Yeah. I think that, there's definitely a bit of that. Plus, like, you know, she just doesn't normally get to exercise that, you know. It's like she might feel that way, but then like people kind of kick her when she's down, you know.
Gotcha.
Because it's you know, at least in a royal court, a real royal court, you know, you would assume that there's like a lot of decorum and stuff like that and hierarchy. But it sounds like in a thieves guild, you know, it's kind of just everybody for themselves, and whoever's the most, like the strongest and most powerful gets, you know, to be in charge. And so that's probably her dad, and she's protected by her dad, but she can't actually exercise her own power.
Yeah, she knows she's little still. Like, I think one person, when her dad brings someone in, he's like, this person's big, important, he's gonna help us. And he gives something to her, and she's like, why are you being so nice to me? Like, she's suspicious and kind of concerned.
Was that in chapter 4?
Yeah. Sorry. Later chapters. There's still a lot of the world building that isn't totally clear. Of course, you know, because we're kind of going between these 3 points of view, right? And they converge at certain points, and then they come in, you know, conflict. And then they team up at other points.
Can you remind me what the 3 points of view are?
Toma, the guard, I think he's like the queen's favorite is what they literally call him at times.
Okay.
I think he has a high social standing. And so he's trying to prove himself out there in the city. Then, of course, you know, Sette with Duane, and then what's Quigley with Maddie.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
The Berry Boys.
Okay, right, gotcha.
Yeah. And
so
now,
even between the Berry Boys and like Quigley, there's a ton of fighting in the chapters we read about like whether they're going to agree to the deal or not.
Yeah. Also, it seems like, do you think that the like Quigley perspective is going, or maybe you even know, not think, but the Quigley perspective kind of combines with Javi, the captured boy, because it seemed like he was pretty important through chapter 1 and 2, and then he comes.
Yeah, you're right. He kind of combines with the Sette.
Javi?
But yeah.
Oh, okay.
I guess him and Maddie also. Yeah, you know, stuff happens.
Yeah, okay.
People have to team up, but then also they get separated.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, it does seem like it's a lot of perspectives, you know, just like, and it seems like Cope isn't afraid to kind of introduce new characters and be all like, well, this is like what I think is like important for you to see, basically. You know,
as opposed to necessarily like doing everything.
Well, just as opposed to like basically only showing like 1 or 2 perspectives, you know, like
Oh, I see what you mean.
You know, it's like, I trust that it's okay to jump to this other plot line in the middle of, you know, one plot line, and just like, you'll keep up.
Yeah. Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, which is like, I mean, I think a little bit risky in a, you know, a page per update kind of style. You know, if it's 3 pages per week. And I guess I'm also kind of assuming here that it's still 1 page per day, you know, just 3 upload days.
I see what you mean.
Yeah. I know when I was reading it, I essentially read kind of more or less 1 chapter a day. And there was some times where I was like, oh, I kind of forgot about that a little bit. I was like, what happened with these people? Am I
I mean, there's a whole language barrier too, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's a whole language that's been written. I don't know, in the back of the books, the print volumes, there's like verbs, present, indicative, active. Like,
Ooh,
they're
wow.
explaining the language.
Dang. Is that the language that like Maddie speaks?
Yeah, so Maddie can't speak the common language that the others can.
Gotcha.
He's from the other area.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I just like skimmed that, and for some reason I assumed it was German. I don't know. I just, yeah.
Yeah.
I think very bold to not have a lore page, but have like a language page.
Right, yeah.
Not even like in a bad way, but I'm like, I don't know, I feel like I'm so used to people having huge lore pages, like here's where this is, and this is where that is. That like, but this is one of the earlier popular webcomics, I would say. You know, 2010s was a really big time for webcomics.
Interesting. I was not conscious at that time.
Makes me think of like the Meek. We should read the Meek. That has like 3 different storylines, which you're not sure if they're going to converge, and tons of political intrigue too.
Huh. Interesting. Yeah, I would say that this is kind of overall takes a lot of bold steps of like, you know, like here are characters in the middle of, you know, not even like action though, but the middle of their adventure.
They've begun to fight.
Yeah. And, you know, we're going to jump to these other characters, you know, and they're in kind of, you know, more or less the beginning of their story, but like not like an inciting incident yet, you know? And, you know, just a lot of these like kind of unnatural, unusual choices being made in this book.
Yeah, I can definitely feel like once I got to like chapter 3, like you were saying, where they start to like resolve conflicts in some ways, or like find solutions, you know, willing to coexist. And other things are being set in motion, like with Maddie and Quigley. I definitely felt the story was like better than you know, of course, the beginning.
Yeah.
Because you're saying, it's bold. In some ways, it's difficult to like deal with reading when you're new to the world. And like it doesn't have the same impact to be like, this is like a thousands of years old monster creature that like we need to respect. And I'm like, this is the first thing I've seen.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Like, I mean, they kept mentioning the tree beast thing, and I was just like, I've already forgotten what that looks like, actually.
I come back.
It's not very...
It's
not very tree-like.
Okay.
It's like, to me, confusing what it looks like.
Yeah.
It's like a root dinosaur.
Root dinosaur. Okay.
Oh my god, we didn't even mention the fact that there are lizards in this story.
Oh, yeah.
There's just lizard people.
Oh, lizards.
It really made me think of like, this isn't like a put down on either of the stories, but like I definitely felt like when I started playing Skyrim or like any of the Elder Scroll games. I don't know if you guys have played any of those.
Yeah.
where there's like so much lingo where they're like, oh, the Bretons, you're so ugly because you're a Breton, da da da. And I'm like, I don't know what any of this means.
Yeah, definitely like that high fantasy. That's kind of what, like, personally kind of turns me off on the genre a lot of the time, where I'm just like, this is so much to take in, you know, like I just want characters with names that I at least like kind of understand, and worlds with rules that make like at least some sense, you know. I don't know, maybe people have the same kind of problems with science fiction, but I'm like, I feel like that's a little bit more rooted in like real world stuff more often.
So there's so many different elements in this story, right? Like you were saying, it starts to get into steampunk later, and the fact that it's like fantasy and there's spells. I can't tell like what level of technology they're supposed to have. I think that's a big problem for me, where a lot of it feels a little disjointed.
Would you say that that's more like a soft magic system, or just not?
Definitely don't feel like there's been rules set up.
Yeah.
You kind of just do what they want. Like sometimes you speak, sometimes you don't.
Yeah, I think that the author knows, like, it's a hard magic system basically, but to the reader we don't know we're only getting small clues as how to define it basically.
Okay.
Because
the fighting is probably like why that fighting feels kind of weak, because we never know like anybody's limits.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Like, yeah, I don't know how powerful of a magic user Duane is, really, you know.
I mean, other than the fact that he doesn't need to speak the spells in order to cast them. Like that.
Which is like stronger than Quigley, but Quigley seems to be really strong already.
Yeah, it seems like platinum-haired people called plats are...
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I think that they are extra in tune with magic and therefore stronger, but that is very much me just kind of picking up context clues, not actually directly stated.
They have a lot of like rumors about that country, the Aldish, that they have like used certain hair color people to like fuel their immortal lives, of course, is what some people say. And they have a whole caste system based on hair colors. So platinum is a certain caste.
Really? I did not catch that.
It comes up later, of course.
Gotcha. So for me, when I was reading it, the unclear magic rules or technology didn't really bother me that much. What was more bothersome to me was just like unclear character relationships and like who people would be. Like that's the thing that I noticed that kind of.
Yeah, I guess like when you say that,
give an example.
So I mentioned this before with like Sette and Duane. Like they already they're already on this voyage.
Oh, so you weren't sure if they were friends before this and they started fighting, or if they just met recently.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. No, for me, the hardest kind of part was just the shifting of narratives. And like, you know, I was like, you know, I've mentioned Javi a couple of times because it seems like they put so much emphasis on him sometimes, where I'm just like, okay, this is a really important character. But then I'm like, maybe he isn't. Like, I mean, I'm sure he is like somewhat important, you know, but I'm just like, how important, you know? And like, like they did a whole like flashback thing for him, I think. It was
like his nightmare, yeah.
Yeah, was that a nightmare? Okay, I thought
think it was a mixture. It was like a nightmare, you know, of him remembering his mother, ? And pirates.
Okay, yeah. I wasn't sure, but I liked that artwork. I thought that was cool. You know, I've noticed too that I like the flatter kind of art styles that she uses sometimes. To change things up, the black and white, the when the stories of the gods are being told, but yeah, the kind of general art style that I think is probably like because I liked the black and white, I assume that it's an effect of the coloring.
Coloring is really, really like soft in some ways. Like the edges are always soft.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's a 2010s kind of style thing.
Yeah. Yeah, things are very rounded too, like in creating like, you know, the shaping basically, using shading to create like depth. Yeah, is just kind of like not something that I particularly like. Yeah, but I guess, yeah, I should think more in the context of like what styles were more popular at the time. And yeah, it makes more sense that I'm like, okay, yeah, this is like a 2010s style.
For sure.
That's interesting because I like the main style better than particularly the black and white one. I don't think I mind when they were talking about the gods, like all that. I don't think I minded that much. But particularly, like even more than the main style, when they did those like, well, it's not really a splash page, but it's like those one panel pages of a specific person or animal, and I think it happened twice. And so, but
do you mean super rendered panels?
Yeah. I really enjoyed those.
Wait,
those were really cool to see. Yeah.
Can you say again where that was exactly? I feel like I'm missing
there's
something.
one when Duane is in the root monster, and like you see him kind of remembering someone. Like he's looking at a skull, and he seems to be thinking. It's almost like he can sense who the skull used to be, and there's like a super rendered image, like a warrior. And the next one is like a blade next to a hand on the snow, and there's like a super rendered eye. But it's very, there's still line art, but the line art is very painterly. So yeah, it's a very painterly style.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think I know what stuff you're talking about now. Yeah, I thought that was like a very interesting choice. I'm not gonna really say that I disliked it or liked it. It was just like, oh, okay, that's a choice, you know. I don't know, that still sounds like pretty negative, but I'm not negative to it. But yeah,
even like they have the one where Duane is with the spirit creature when the guy wants it to kill him, and you see like this super rendered page of Duane connecting with it, sort of.
Okay.
Yeah, very painterly. It's a really interesting change. You can always tell that it's supposed to be a very significant moment.
Yeah.
I feel like it gets used less and less as the chapters went.
Yeah, because I think I only remember it happening twice, when the first 3 chapters.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did you guys feel? We mentioned it a little bit earlier when I was, just wondering about something else, but the using kind of other like effects over top the page, like the the blood stains, kind of going over the panel borders and stuff like that.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool.
Okay.
It's a good way of doing it. I think their layouts were pretty good. They were always really interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think that I am maybe a little bit colored by my non-investment in the story and characters, because it's hard to like remove myself from that a little bit, where I'm like, yeah, I guess that is cool, but like I'm just kind of like a little bit checked out on the story itself,
That's doing too much for you anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd say, I think the parts I liked the least were honestly the fight parts. Like we talked about the fact that I have no idea like if anybody's winning ever. I think I don't know, it might be slightly choreography, but also just the magic happens, it's good or bad.
Yeah, I don't think I was thinking about that while I was reading, but yeah, it is kind of just like it. Well, yeah, and the thing too for me, actually, I think what I liked the least was just the pacing. I was like consistently like unsure of like when kind of a stopping point, I guess, would happen. You know, I was, because I knew that these were separated into chapters, and I knew that the chapters were, you know, not just a standard length of pages, but still I was like, okay, well, we have this fight is going to end, and it did. And then I was like, okay, so we're going to, you know, like, this is going to get resolved pretty soon. And it kept going, yeah. And it was just like, wow. Yeah, like, how does this become, like, kind of self-contained within a chapter, basically?
Oh, gotcha. I kind of figured that it was, like, she kind of picked and choose, like, when the chapter would end. And I only say that because the first chapter is, like, half the amount of pages as the rest of the chapters.
Right.
And even the rest of the chapters that we chose aren't even the longest
in the series. Yeah, no, for sure. And it does kind of seem like, especially in the beginning, like it's probably a little bit more based on like chapters are more like scenes in not scenes in a movie, but like basically, like, you know, they go kind of very different locations, and you know, like the
very
first
short amount of time.
Yeah, the first one is like, you know, this like foresty area, you know, and like sure they go to the crypt, but the crypt is still within that same area. But then the third chapter is in this rainy, you know, city, you know, and I'm trying to remember, or no, I think that's right. No, okay, so the second chapter is more of the crypt, and and then the first chapter is more of the foresty. So yeah, it is like a little bit more of like these very defined scene location changes.
Oh, I see.
Basically, is what I would say is probably part of what the distinguishing factor is. I'm not sure if that's like everything, you know. It's also like, you know, character introductions, and you know, like obviously chapter 3, I'm like, okay, yeah, that was a good stopping point. Like, I'm like, okay, we introduced some new people, we got some resolution for Duane and Sette, you know. But yeah, those earlier ones, I was just kind of like, where are we going and why? Like, I don't even know why to like really care about finding, you know, Sette's cousin.
Well, you don't care about her father?
Yeah.
Flashbacks definitely help with that. But I'll say, I think a big problem I realized after finishing like the first book and starting the second book, so getting to like chapter 5, I think I realized that a lot of stuff is, you know, there's a lot of talking, and so there's a lot of stuff solved through talking or like argued through talking. Like, people end up just threatening each other, and that's how we end up finishing a conversation. And it's very tiring.
Can you give an example?
Well, Duane and Sette, you know, most of what they have is arguments, right? At first, and then they solve it by like promising. I feel like there needs to be more physical stuff, like, oh, I bought you this, and like an emphasis on that. But there's so much emphasis on them talking and talking and talking. Like, even with Quigley and a Starfish, part of the Red Berry Boys. You know, it's talking, and like later on has like, oh, you don't want to do it, and just like puts a knife to his throat, and the end of that conversation. And like, granted, there's action scenes, but a lot of times it doesn't feel that cohesive with the talking scenes.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, we're done talking now. We're going to do a bunch of action. And then a little bit of talking and taunting. And then action. So, I don't know. There's definitely, it's not true for all of it, but like, I can definitely feel it in a lot of the early chapters where I'm like, man, there's no... If I wasn't reading this, if I was skimming it, I'd have no idea, like, what would be going on. Mm-hmm. Like, they don't say enough with their actions, I feel like.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's what kind of was part of what helped lose me too, just like reading it, day to day and being like, okay, none of this is really like telling me like I have to really focus on these words where these characters are talking, in kind of a strange way to know and remember like what our goal is and where we're going. And
so which again is why the crypt scene is so good, right? Like Sette is like reacting to things around her, and like clearly she's not going to say she's scared, but like it's upsetting to her, and Duane thinking that she's being hurt by one of the guards reacts negatively. It's a very strong scene. Even though there's still a lot of talking. They're like interrogating Sette. I don't know.
So if I understand you correctly, when you say the characters don't say enough with their actions, you mean in the sense of how they're like, not necessarily like how they're drawn, but like the action they're doing in that panel.
They just like stand there and talk to each other and walk in circles and talk.
Gotcha. Okay. I thought you were saying like their talking wasn't enough. Like the plot of what they did wasn't saying enough. And so it was the difference between like, the way that things went as opposed to like the choices the artist made.
Right.
In portraying the character. I see.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So in that regard, I didn't necessarily see that. And so that would be interesting to look back and just be like, ignore the word bubble and just like, see, because I assume that if this artist like drew the characters in a way that would make more sense with what you're saying, Shuenta, it would be easier to understand what's going on without the word bubbles. Is that right?
Yeah. I do feel that comics a lot of times, like, you should be able to not read it at all.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Reading it should, like, add another depth to it. Like, otherwise it's like, why would you even have them talk, of course? But, man, yeah, there's so much talking.
That's interesting. I never thought about that before.
Yeah. And another challenge, to you for that, is like when you like let, the next, I don't know, let's say 2 days go by, like on Tuesday, basically, it's a Saturday today, and try to like think about what happened in the 3 chapters, because it's like, I feel like I'm going to kind of forget everything except for like the most important details of just like, okay, we're on this journey, there's some slavers, they're not really slavers, there's some magic.
No, I can agree with you on that.
Yeah, and I think that boils down to, a lot of the details being more focused on the words, and it's like we are more akin to taking, images to help us, remember, because it's more like our sensory experience,
That is so fascinating to me. Because I think for me, right, the thought is like, comics is a visual medium. Like, that's the idea. But I often ignore the art when I'm reading comics. I'm just paying attention to what they're saying, and not a lot. And I think what helps with that is because I often reading it online and using a guided view where you don't get that like big picture. Like it's easier to focus on the art when you get that whole page as opposed to just little snippets of that page.
Definitely. Yeah. And I mean, I think that like it is a little bit, I agree with what you say, but also like there is something to be said for, I think that a lot of people say that they don't focus on the art, and that's true. They're not focusing, but it's like watching a movie and you're not necessarily focusing on the cinematography. You are, you are just engaged in it. You are kind of living in the world and you are listening to the dialogue, and so unless they do something really dramatic with the picture, where it's like,
Fair
whoa. But it is still, you get kind of more out of it because both are a visual medium,
True.
Yeah. So I don't know, that's cool though, that, I think, I was going to say too that, kind of jumping back to the art also, I don't know if it's just the style, like we said earlier, of like, the 2010s, but like sometimes like things are just like weirdly proportioned too. Like, I mean, I felt like Duane, looks very fine and normal, but like children and Sette included, like I'm like weird eyes, weird,
like,
just
like big eyes. Or...
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just like I don't know if that's again just like I guess I'm tempted to say that's just personal preference, but still, I just had to mention it where I was just like, I don't.
Do you think it's just kind of like a 2010s kind of style where there's like a little bit less structure on the eye, so they end up being very rounded? At least that's how I feel about it. So their eyes get really big and kind of invade other parts of the face.
Gotcha.
It's totally passable. It's just a little nitpicky thing, I feel.
So, like, do you think that is more because of a particular, like, lack of thought? I don't know. Like, how I interpret what you're saying is, like, lack of thought on the author on, like, the eyes, or, like...
No, I think it's done on purpose.
With it, too. Like... It's a matter of being like, okay, it's really easy to draw eyes a certain way every time the face is this like angle, and so I always draw it that way, and kind of forgetting to think about the structure itself because it's become such second nature to draw the eye.
Okay.
Yeah, that is kind of...
You're doing 3 pages a week, man.
Yeah. That's actually a good point.
It? Oof.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a good point to kind of keep in perspective of like, how much work is going into this in like such a short amount of time.
Gotcha. Because I was kind of thinking like, I don't remember where I heard this before, but like that's like a trend of having, like, to show people being younger, like they would have bigger eyes.
Well, yeah, for sure, and that's not really what I mean.
A natural proportion, yeah.
Yeah.
Like that, the bigger eyes are still naturally proportions, I was saying?
No, I'm just saying that, like, they just, I mean, maybe this is still, like, less detailed, but I'm just, like, they just look off, Like, it just, when I look at Sette, I'm just, like, kind of, it's uncanny, and it's, like...
And Maddie.
Yeah, and Maddie. I feel like Maddie was even, like, a little bit easier to look at. I
think Sette makes a lot of different faces, and so, things move around. There's a lot of, like, stretching and squashing and exaggerating stuff, kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Interesting. Because, like, the thing that threw me off about Sette is more, like, the tail. Like, for some reason, her having a tail is really weird to me.
Wow, you're just like a person in that world.
No, I kind of see what Talon means. Like, the tail is kind of rendered a little bit like fairly realistically, and I don't really know how you would render it differently either, like to make it look more cartoony.
Well, I think it would be like it should be thicker. Like for one, it looks like a very thin tail.
Yeah, having it more of like, I mean, it's like kind of supposed to be a lion tail, I think, but it does kind of seem like a rat tail too, and it's just like, ugh.
I assumed it was a rat tail.
Yeah.
Until she was like, it's a lion tail in like chapter 4 or something.
I also think, and I don't exactly know where this would fit into like how you would go about thinking about this, but I think the biggest thing is that the tail seems like kind of just there, like, or how do I say it? Like, if you don't think about it, it's not there.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, oh, but it is. And it's like, oh, she has a tail. You can forget about it easily. So it's like, it's not a major part of her character, I guess, or like major enough. You know what I mean? I don't know if I'm necessarily saying it in the right way.
Yeah, I mean, it's like we said earlier that, like, you know, it's just another one of those details that isn't initially, like, explained to us in the story. It's just like, yeah, she has to hide it, and it's there, but we're not going to tell you about why. Why she has it, why it's there, why she has to hide it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Such a weird little quirk. It's another thing that I feel like there's zombies, there's lizard people, she's got a lion tail. Like, are there demons in this world? Is she one of them? Like, what would even make her? Like, there's so many different things it could mean, and I don't know if it's possible for this world.
Gotcha.
You know? I don't know what the limitations are.
Yeah. Yeah, though, I think, how interested are you guys in reading more of this?
Oh, I'm not.
No.
And I'll say this, like, for a particular reason, like, I feel like the content of this comic is just way too
mature for you.
I mean, I guess you could say it that way.
Actually, that sounds really mean.
Yeah, I was like, dang, she went.
The way I look at it is like, I don't see why.
It's a little crass. It gets crass.
I don't see why I need to indulge in that. Like,
yeah, I guess we didn't really talk about that much. Like here, that it's definitely kind of a, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, we said crass, but like they sometimes just switch into talking about, like, you know, very like kind of violent or, you know, not inherently like sexual, but like just like kind of like, you know, like kind of
upsetting stuff.
Yeah, upsetting.
Yeah. Like, and for some reason, like the two things that are coming to mind is like how there are two instances where Sette accuses Duane of only wanting to save those humans because he was attracted to her.
To the
attracted to kids,
or attracted to the. I mean, I guess it was the older kid.
He also made that joke, though.
Huh? No, I'm not talking about that.
He also made that joke, but that was the one that really made me go, ugh.
Oh, gotcha. And then there was another one in particular with Javi, is it?
Yeah.
In Javi's dream, where his mom was like, men have lost their manhood. And I was just like, those two things just came off as like, I really don't like that.
That is so like tame in comparison, I feel, to like the jokes that Sette is making.
I mean, yeah.
I hate that joke, and she continues it like in later chapters. That's the one part where I'm like, I don't like that. Like, I get that she's supposed to be crass, like she's in like a criminal underground world for most of her life, but like
Yeah.
it's not. I feel like the author's including it because it's like funny that she keeps bringing it up,
Yeah.
but it's not to me.
I thought it was funny. Even Duane was like, "Man, I'm hearing the words coming out of your mouth, and they scare me." Or like, he didn't. Those weren't the words that he used, but it was like, "Yeah, that's what I'm thinking." Like, so the author knows.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I thought was like really gross was in the crypt. Sette runs into one of those urns, and there's collected body parts.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh.
Organs. Yeah.
I was like, that was very unsettling to me.
Yeah, it was pretty unsettling. Like just the kind of blood and viscera, you know, it's just
like the treatment of the kids in general.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I don't know, always, I think for me, what I'm more biased towards is like, I always want there to be some kind of like something the author is saying in the midst of that. Like if I'm going to take this in, like I want the author to say point blank, like whether or not this is okay. And like, I'm okay. If I agree with them, I'm like, okay, I can like this. Obviously, if I don't disagree with you, then, or if I do disagree with you, I'm like,
do you think they're saying slavery's bad? And like what these people are doing is bad?
Well,
I don't think they're saying anything.
No, I think that, so what I was thinking about while we were talking about this is that like, basically I can tell that it's like Duane like really cares that like, you know, this stuff is happening, and like, you know, like he is kind of like almost like re-traumatized, you know, because he's obviously like traumatized by like other stuff in his like past life and, you know, current life and stuff like that. But you know, but the thing is that like for some reason, I don't know if this like comes back to like, you know, the way that it's drawn versus like, you know, the things that are said in the dialogue, but I just don't care, you know, like I'm supposed to care through these characters.
I see.
You know, but it's just like, it's just gross, and I'm like, you know, like the stuff that we're talking about that's gross, and then I'm just like, well, you know, I don't get why Duane cares, I guess, you know, other than it's wrong and bad. But I don't feel the feelings that I can tell that I'm supposed to be feeling from him.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Like it's telling me that he's feeling that, but I'm not connecting with Duane.
I gotcha. Yeah.
One of the websites described this story as like a kind of bleak world where people who, you know, can't really do right are trying to. So I do think it's I think that's the point of the story, and I think Talon, knowing you don't like those types of stories, like responding to it accurately. You're responding to it in character.
Yeah, true. And as you were saying that, one of the things that it made me think of, you know, can you repeat how that was describing this comic again?
Wish I could find it again. Like,
but
it was specifically said by like the author, I think.
But so it was like a you say a darker world where people are trying to do right.
Oh yeah.
They can't, like something like that. And
a bleak world. Yeah.
Yeah. And so one of the things that
okay, here it is. Here it is.
Okay.
Unsounded is a story about people with good intentions struggling to do right in a world that's mostly gone wrong.
Gotcha. Yeah. No, that's really good. Honestly, like, you know, I can appreciate that, like that take. But what I was gonna say is like there was with Maddie, Maddie had like a pet robot. I guess you could say pet robot.
It's an ogre. It's a modified ogre, you find out.
Okay, gotcha. And so for some reason, to me, it was like, that modified ogre like looked very kid-like.
Yeah.
And so to me, it was like, wow, this like darker world is very bright and like on the surface.
Yeah.
And
I get what you mean. Very
Yeah.
cutesy on the surface.
Yeah, and it's like, that's disturbing.
It feels a little bit of tonal whiplash. Like even I think the Patreon says at times that it lists off like there's politicians, like mages, cops, so forth, and sometimes butt fairies.
Yeah.
Singing butt fairies, which I'm like, what in the world?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
how's this mesh all together?
Yeah.
No, yeah, in that the ogre thing, that it really reminded me of like either Groot from the Guardians of the Galaxy movies or the Iron Giant, just like kind of this like big hulking thing that doesn't like, know any better.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
And kind of comic relief, but like, yeah, it was just kind of like, oh, okay, that's like, a sillier, thing suddenly. It's just like,
yeah. And I think you were reading this in the wiki, but they were talking about that, like they jump between like the horror and the funny and the profane,
right?
kind of
Yes,
thing.
yeah.
Fantasy.
Yeah.
Splash of horror and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't get to answer whether I would read more of it, I guess.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I really liked Chapter 4 and Chapter 5. Had a big fight scene, which, like, did not have any stakes to me. I'll probably, like, read it all just to see, like, where it goes. Because I definitely think they're getting better with chapters. But, yeah, it's a little bit less interesting than I'd hoped, since I tend to like fantasy. But there's just so many different elements in it that are hard for me to find cohesive.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
I mean, it's all free, though. Support them all.
Yeah, true. Yeah, no, I kind of, for me, I've kind of said it, throughout the episode, like, the characters, didn't really take me until, like, towards the end, and even then, I was just kind of like, okay, I understand you more, but you haven't won me over completely, and the world...
3 chapters.
Yeah. And yeah, the world is like still confusing, but not intriguingly confusing, where I'm just like, oh, I have to know more.
It. Like, we realize that, right? Like, it's hard to summarize anything because so much of it, there's so much there, and it's so hard to summarize.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely things where it's just like, is this detail, even necessary here? Like, it probably is later, but, like, will I even remember that you referenced it, Or will I just be like, oh, now they're introducing this thing? Because I finally understand it. I don't know. Yeah, and then the art didn't really take me either. I think, there's, like, honestly, I actually realized I liked the art better in Chapter 1, surprisingly. Usually, like, there's kind of like a progression. But Chapter 2 has more of that, like, kind of shiny shading, I feel like.
Oh, yeah, I gotcha.
But
yeah, I will say, like, this art makes me think of, like, old animation, like Batman the Animated Series. Like,
that's old animation.
Well, yeah. Well, you're talking about, you're not 92 or yeah, like yeah. But like older,
right? Yeah.
And so, like, I don't know, for that, I feel like that kind of connected with me, like, because I really like the main style of art, and so
yeah. I mean, it's I guess really something that
I think their backgrounds and scenes are really good, especially towards Chapter 3. Like the more inanimate objects or like side characters.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I might be able to see that. One thing that I guess I didn't mention, or I didn't think to mention that I think is like also relevant is like, you know, I think that this style is very like obviously like digital. You know, like,
Okay.
I mean,
a lot of the like soft shading ends
Yeah.
up feeling that way.
right. Yeah, and I think that that's kind of what, you know, gets me. And that's like, you know, also the connection, you know, like, I mean, actually, since you mentioned Batman the Animated Series, that is actually hand drawn for most of the part. But like, you know, that is leaning towards more and more like a heavily digital style. So yeah, I can see that connection basically. But yeah, I think I'm a little bit because like obviously like most mainstream comics are digital now, but there's kind of a way to make it, you know, cheat it to look like it's more hand drawn.
Gotcha.
And yeah, I'm just kind of like this, like, you know, it feels more like fakey, I guess, to me.
I see what you mean.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, so I'm just kind of like, I'm done with this. But I'm glad the other people like it. You know, like I said, it's more popular than I realized it was. And I'm always glad for that. Like, you know, I don't want to understate, like, you know, how much work is obviously going into this. You know, like, I mean, that's like, you know, part of what I didn't like is also something that's really impressive is like, you know, this giant world building. You know, that isn't easy to do.
And 60 hours a week.
Yeah.
On this comic.
Yeah.
It's clearly a good comic. It's just not for me.
Yeah.
I do want to add, so in the displaying of webcomics, you know, there's a varying degrees of like, either it's very simple or it's like not easy to navigate, right? I think this is probably one of the better, if not best, like format of a webcomic that we've read. Like, and I especially appreciate the when the art like bleeds outside of the frame of the, I don't know why. It's just like, that looks so cool to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I can appreciate that too. I think, you know, I do feel like, you know, the other complaints I feel like we've had with other web comics, it's been not so bad. Like, you mean, you could argue that the brattishness of Sette is like a little bit of that, you know, everything has to be like kind of cutesy funny, but like almost turned on its head. But I don't know. Yeah, there's enough like seriousness going on that it's like, I think it's counterbalanced.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that. That's really good. Like the lack of like everything's got to be extra.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I think that this definitely, and I mean, I think that that comes with the intention that it seems like, you know, if you're on the website, it says like at the top in the header, you know, Unsounded, a graphic novel by Ashley Cope, you know, it's not working as much in the realm of the, you know, common denominator of webcomics, you know, it's like it's trying to be something that would normally be in print, you know, just in a digital format.
Gotcha. And she did say that the way that she makes her money is through the graphic, like the actual printed form.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, it makes sense. Man, I feel like this is like a whole nother can of worms that I probably shouldn't open it, but maybe, I don't know, maybe it'll be fast. But I would say too, it's kind of strange to me that like I almost half expect to like this more because I realized there's actually some like pretty broad similarities to Saga.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. You know, like warring nations and, you know, like, I mean, obviously, like, you know, it doesn't have like the love story that's like the core of Saga, but, you know, it does have a lot of those like kind of a big world that with a like kind of
Anything can
meandering
happen.
adventure, anything can happen.
Mm.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. I don't know if I would necessarily agree with you in the connection to Saga.
Okay.
Because like I can see those elements, but I don't think that I don't think there's enough connections for me to.
Saga's more crude.
Yeah.
You think so?
Saga
it has more. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we read more of it than 3 chapters worth, or even if you just said the same amount of pages.
But they love Saga.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah, I think that the biggest difference for me is that I just became very attached to the main characters. And even when
yeah,
you
like them.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. But all right, so yeah, I think that's all that we have for this book. So again, this is Unsounded, a graphic novel by Ashley Cope. You can find it, there's on her website, casualvillain.com /unsounded. Is the graphic novel version only available on her Kickstarter, or is it in print, like on a website also?
I think typically when they do the Kickstarters is when you get to buy them. I don't think there's a ton of stock otherwise.
Okay.
And they're going to be working on, I think, the 4th one. Not soon, but pretty soon.
Okay.
They have the chapters ready.
Does that mean that you can't buy the first few books?
Yeah, you'd probably have to just buy them used, I would assume.
Okay.
Well, you can probably buy them when the Kickstarter happens, and they have okay, now they have Volume 1 is available for $20, and Volume 3 is available for $22, and you can buy the PDFs. But Volume 2 is out of stock. Okay. But yeah, they're they stay afloat through the Patreon.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and then is the Patreon called something specific, or is it just like patreon.com /unsounded?
Yeah, it's pretty much patreon.com /unsounded.
Okay. So yeah, that's where you can go if you want to find out more.
They also have a Twitter.
Yeah, all that stuff. Yeah, it's pretty easy to find, it's very Googleable. All right, well, I think that's all we have for this show. I'm Cody.
I'm Talon.
And I'm Shawenta.
And this has been the Comic Panel. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening. If you like this episode, be sure to subscribe to our podcast on Apple Music, Spotify, or Podbean. You can support this podcast by sharing it with anyone you know and by rating and reviewing our podcast. You can also reach out to us with any thoughts you have on the things we talk about on Twitter at TheComicPanel1 and on Instagram and Facebook at TheComicPanel. We appreciate your feedback and look forward to sharing many more comic thoughts with you. Have a blessed day.